If you've ever been to the Exchange District and visited the Cinematheque Theatre on the corner of Bannatyne and Arthur, or you have simply spent any amount of time working in the arts community, there is a good chance that you have either heard of the name Dave Barber, or if you were lucky enough, you had the pleasure of meeting him. Sadly, last week, Dave Barber passed away at the age of just 67 years old. He was a true icon on the artistic scene here in Winnipeg. He served as the senior programmer at the Winnipeg Film Group for almost 40 years and grew the Cinematheque Theatre into one of the best independent theaters in North America. The Winnipeg Film Group is hoping to start a film fund in Dave Barber's name, and here to tell us about Dave Barber, his legacy, and the film fund is David Knipe, interim executive director of the Winnipeg Film Group, and James Asmundson, the programming director at Cinematheque. James and David, it's nice to have you here over Zoom.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I want to first preface the conversation by saying that for me in my late 20s and all throughout my 30s, the Cinematheque Theatre in the Exchange was my mecca. I would go there almost every weekend whenever I could. I just loved it there. And obviously I can't go now because of COVID, but I'm certainly looking forward to going back. And one of the names that kept popping up whenever I would visit Cinematheque, sometimes there'd be introductions made to films, was the name Dave Barber. James, can you first of all just maybe give us a little bit of background as to who Dave Barber was and how he started at Cinematheque?
Who Dave Barber was, like that's such a loaded question, you know? He was probably the kindest and sweetest person I've ever met in my life, and also he was not only an encyclopedia of film, but he lived and breathed and sweated film. You know, he was like every waking moment was about film, but not just film. Like he was really just a lover of Canadian film, and he always wanted to you know, encourage like local films, but also, you know, do everything in his power to get those films out there and get like public eyes on them. And yeah, he would treat like you know, me as a filmmaker personally, when I was younger, he would treat one of my, you know, terrible short films with as much, you know, enthusiasm as you would film by like a local, like a visiting filmmaker, like, you know, a film master. So yeah, I don't know, it's hard to just talk about him and summarize his life, but yeah, he worked at Cinematheque the day it opened in 1982, and every day since.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the history of the Cinematheque and the story of Dave's life for the past 40 years are synonymous, you know, and the Cinematheque has been Dave, and arguably the film group for its almost entire existence has been Dave. You know, he's been the stalwart, he's been the steady, consistent guiding hand behind everything, and you know, he was the heart and soul of the film group Cinematheque and arguably the Winnipeg arts community.
Dave, I'll ask this question of you. I saw his short film, Will the Real Dave Barber Stand Up, which is hilarious. I had the pleasure of meeting him briefly. He struck me as being somebody who had a sort of wry sense of humor. What was he like to work with? And do you have like any anecdotes that stick out in your mind as to memorable moments of Dave Barber?
So many. You know, they say that laughter is one of the best therapies for grief, and we've just been sharing so many laughs and fond memories and stories of Dave throughout the years this past week, and everything Dave did was touched with humor and suffused with that wry, sarcastic perspective, you know, and he just had such a light air about him, you know, and he never took anything too seriously, and but you know, he obviously was very serious and dedicated to what he did and loved film and music so much, but you know, he never wanted anybody to sweat the small stuff, and you know, he was always pushing forward this attitude that, you know, it's all right, you know, just relax, have fun, do what you love, and it'll all be okay. And working with him here in the office for the past several years has just been such a joy in my life personally, and so many others who've met him, because he carried that spirit everywhere he went, and he just made you feel so comfortable and welcome and at ease. He just had such a great disarming sense about him. You immediately just felt like you were his pal and you knew him forever. And through that was a lot of laughter.
Yeah. But I just wanted to add, like the film talking about will the real Dave Barber please stand up was about him receiving a Queen's Diamond Jubilee Award, which was for another Dave Barber.
Yeah.
And Dave was a kind of person who didn't want to. He was just such a kind person that he felt bad about even like pointing out someone else's faults, like when they were, when they were handing him an award for someone else.
Right.
But it's such a funny story that he really wanted to tell it in a film, but he felt really bad about it at the same time because he loved the NDP government and he didn't want to paint a bad picture of Greg Selinger, and he was really worried that it would lead to some kind of negative reaction from the public. But so I think he actually kind of sat on it for a while, and didn't really want to share it publicly because he was worried. So I think that that really speaks to his character as well as he wanted to wait and sit on the story until it was okay to share it.
Yeah.
And actually, sorry, one of the things I'm thinking about doing with the article that's going to be on our website, classic107.com, is if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to embed that short film by Dave Barber. It's on YouTube, so if you wouldn't mind, I'll embed it if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Another maybe a little anecdote. James and I have recently been going through Dave's stuff at his apartment and sorting through, because he kept every single thing from the last career at the film group. And it's really in my mind, the greatest Canadian cinema archive outside of maybe TIFF or the CFMDC. And it's just really incredible. It's staggering amount of work that he kept. And, we kept going through and discovering things and laughing about different things and, things that Dave had written. But one thing struck in my mind was that fake ad copy, or that ad copy he wrote, the press release to the Free Press. So he wanted to have, it starts, Winnipeg Film Group invites Jack Nicholson to introduce midnight screening of, I can't remember what film it was, but, it goes on to say Jack Nicholson's going to make a special appearance at Winnipeg.
I have it.
Oh, he has it.
Do you want me to read it to you?
Sure, absolutely.
Cinematheque invites Jack Nicholson to Winnipeg. June 19th, 1989. The Winnipeg Film Group Cinematheque has invited film star Jack Nicholson to their Friday night midnight screening of Terms of Endearment, the third film in its second annual festival of really bad films. We know he's probably fairly busy with the Batman opening right now, said Dave Barber, Cinematheque coordinator. That's why we scheduled the screening for midnight in his off time. Terms of Endearment was sort of Jack Nicholson's breakthrough movie, said Cinematheque house manager Joe Burgess. I think Jack still has a soft spot in his heart for this movie. And then then just says when it's running, and then of course the bring a bowling ball and get in free offer is still open. There's no word yet on whether Mr. Nicholson has accepted the offer.
I mean, that's just like a perfect encapsulation of Dave's sense of humor and how he carried himself in his work at Cinematheque.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the things I always wondered as a patron at Cinematheque was how the selection process came about. He was the senior programmer. How did he find the movies and how did that work? Did he just sort of propose them to the Winnipeg Film Group in the hopes that they would get presented at Cinematheque? How did that process work? Maybe talk us through that a bit.
I came in as the department director 10 years ago, but it was really just to help the business development of Cinematheque and to just help Dave realize his vision. So, I mean, like, I've never stepped in the way of his programming. It's always been his programming. And he spent like so much time researching and watching films. He would go to Hot Docs and the Toronto International Film Festival every year. And he would talk to other programmers across Canada. And he was constantly being sent of like film links from filmmakers and distributors like every day. So he spent just every waking hour watching films. Like that's just what he did. And just if he saw a great good film, then he wanted to share it. That was literally his selection process was wanting to share a good film. But he'd also really wanted to he wouldn't just wait for films to come to him. He'd always be, going out in the public and like going to events and talking to filmmakers and encouraging them to make films. And then he would watch, if you talk to any filmmaker in the city, they'll tell you the same story, that they showed Dave their short film when they were young, and he really gave them the encouragement to keep going, and then they became like really exciting voices in filmmaking. And so one of the first places they wanted to show their film was always at Cinematheque, because of that history. So Dave cultivated that, like a really great film community in the city, I'd say, just in addition to programming.
I mean, I was reading about him. I mean, he had such a significant impact, not only here in the city, but also throughout the province and throughout the country. I was reading someplace, like, didn't he have a hand in starting the Gimli Film Festival as well?
No, but he'd always, through that festival's 20-year history, Dave was always there every year, going to the festival, watching films, and was a huge supporter. But you're right, Chris, his impact on not just the local film and art scene here in Winnipeg, but across the country is so deeply felt. And if anyone has seen all of the reminiscences and outpourings of grief and love being shared on Dave's Facebook since he passed, we're seeing people from all over the country who've been touched by Dave and impacted by him and his work. And people that remember Dave showing their short film, their independent short film in 1986, and they, he gave them a chance, and they went on to an illustrious career. And that was the thing about Dave. He was always championing the smaller films, the independent stuff, the filmmakers that needed a break, that he saw some potential in, and really just anybody. He always had a kind word to say about someone's film, and always gave constructive feedback, and made people feel like they had a chance, and that their films had something of value and something to say. And Dave was usually, as James said, that first stop on many filmmakers' careers. One filmmaker was telling me, Cinematheque would host kind of screenings for like NSI, National Screen Institute, and other things here, to do like, wrap ups of their film programs, just small local screenings with friends and family. And Dave would always go. And somebody, who saw him in the crowd said, "Dave, why do you always come to these things? These are just small first time short films. We're just, learning." And he said, "Well, you never know. There could be a great film or great filmmaker in this bunch."
So the Winnipeg Film Group wants to start a film fund in Dave Barber's name. Can you talk a little bit about that, David or James?
Yeah, definitely. We really wanted to. Well, I mean, how can you accurately pay tribute and honor to someone that's meant so much to the Winnipeg film community, right? And we have a lot of ideas of ways that we could do that for Dave, and carry on his work and dedication, and have his name live on. And one of the things we thought of was to set up this feature filmmaking fund for local filmmakers who need that little bit of extra step in getting their feature films made. Dave, as I said, was such a huge champion of filmmakers here, and always wanted to see them progress, and was willing to do anything he could to help them get to that next level. If that meant sharing their short film across the country with other programmers and theaters, or getting in touch with a distributor who might want to distribute somebody's films. He was doing that work up until the day he died, and we just want to continue it in his honor, and continue to provide the opportunities for artistic development, career development for filmmakers here that Dave was always doing.
Sounds just great. So I'll wrap the interview up this way. Where can people go to give money to the Film Fund for Dave Barber?
Yeah, you can go to the Winnipeg Film Group website, so winnipegfilmgroup.com. There is a button at the top that says shop. If you click that, scroll down, you'll see donations. That's our donation page. We're accepting all donations through there, and everything will be going towards the Dave Barber Feature Filmmaking Fund.
It sounds just great. So I guess my final period that I'm going to put on this is that I guess the best way to support or to live Dave Barber's legacy is to continue to go to Cinematheque, right? I mean, that was really his baby. It begs the question, what is Cinematheque doing now that the province has eased COVID restrictions? Can you give us just a little bit of a heads up of what to expect at Cinematheque?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking a lot about that. Our default was probably just to take a few weeks off because this has been really difficult for us. But we also know that Dave would really want us to open the theater because that's what meant the most to him.
Mm-hmm.
This past year and a half has been so hard on him because it's like what he did every day was he would go to work and he would introduce films at the Cinematheque every night, and it's been difficult for us too, obviously. But so yeah, we're planning to reopen the theater next Friday. And we're still working out the details and the kinks of how that's going to work. But we're going to be open 7 p.m. August 13th is the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we really felt it was important, as James said, to make sure the Cinematheque reopened, to continue Dave's work, and also to give the community a place to gather and maybe share in more stories, and share in the space that Dave cultivated and put so much love into, and grieve. So we wanted to give that opportunity to the community as well as ourselves.
Yeah, and we've been working on a series called Dave's Faves, of some of Dave's favorite films. Then we're gonna ask folks from the community to come and introduce and share some stories about Dave. And also, if anyone's listening and you have a Dave story or of a film that he loved and you would like to share it, get in touch with us. We'd love to have you come and introduce the film. So.
Wow, it sounds just great. Dave and James, this has just been a real treat. And for our Classic 107 listeners out there, I will be embedding a direct link to the Dave Barber Film Fund page on our website, classic107.com. David and James, thanks again. This has just been such a pleasure.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thank you.